and welcome back to BSB Preview, the 6 p.m. edition, where we are promoting our titles coming out in February. And I always have to think about that because January feels like it's about 6 weeks long, but it's not. February is just around the corner. So tonight, right now, we have with us Renee Roman, David S. Pederson, Joy Argento, and Ali Vali, with a special recorded appearance by Jenny Frame. Awesome. So I'm going to start off with the recording from Jenny.
Hi, this is Jenny Frame, and I'm going to be reading from Royal Family, which is the 4th in the Royal Romance series. I hope you enjoy it. Clay gazed through the window of the upmarket pub, and she was frozen for a second. It was the first time she'd seen Katja out of her uniform. The blonde hair that had been pinned up in a conservative bun now hung loose and cascaded over her shoulders. Katja was concentrating intently on something at the table, and the heart that had betrayed Clay when she first saw Katja did so again. Even more so when Katja leaned her head and her hair cascaded to one side, leaving her neck exposed. She was beautiful, and Clay could just imagine her lips kissing her soft neck. She caught herself and squeezed her eyes shut tightly. What was wrong with her? Was she a walking hormone or something? Why did she have to drool over every woman she met? She pulled herself together and entered the pub. She went up to the bar and got a bottle of lager and wandered over to the table. Katja? She looked up and gave her a smile. Veronica, hi! Clay felt her hands sweating as she stood there, that smile making her shiver. Can I get you a drink? No, I'm fine. Katja raised her wine glass. Clay sat down and finally saw it was a computer pad screen Katja had been working on. I'm glad we're getting this chance to talk, Veronica. It's Clay, she said firmly. Okay, Clay. I'm glad we got this chance to talk. I wanted to talk to you about my weekly playtime table. Clay noticed that as a few customers brushed past Katja, she flinched and then fanned her hair over that side of her face. It was as if she was trying to keep a low profile. Are you listening to me? Katja asked. What did you say? Katja sighed. I asked if you would like to look at my playtime table, since it will involve your police presence at some of the outings. Clay took the pad off her and read over what looked like a school timetable. This is for the next 2 weeks. Then the documentary will start, so there will be some changes, depending on whether the princesses are expected to go to events with Queen Beatrice. One thing that jumped out to her was weekly cooking and baking lessons in the palace kitchen. What is this thing? The kids are not in the army. I mean, what if they don't want to cook that day? Clay pointed to the screen. Children don't always want to do things at specific times. They need structure, but they do enjoy it once they get started. Cooking and baking are great fun for children. Clay shook her head as she gazed at the screen. There's no time left in the afternoon. I always take Teddy out to the palace gardens and play with the dogs. It's our thing. The children will be tired after a morning of structured play, but I can try and fit that in somewhere else. Structured play? When do they get to be kids? Clay sounded angry and annoyed. Kat should probably have used her experience and training to soothe the situation, but Clay was really aggravating her. She'd been nothing but nice to Clay, and yet Clay seemed to dislike her on sight. Children respond well to rules and routine and structured play. Rules mean safety, Katja said. You went to school to learn this shit? Clayton's voice was raised, and some people were starting to look. Katja didn't like attracting attention. "You don't seem to like me very much, Veronica. Everyone told me, Clay is so nice, so bubbly, so friendly, but not to me." Katja lowered the tone of her voice, as she would with any child in a tantrum. And that's what Sergeant Clayton was behaving like, a child in a tantrum. It was a shame, because she was really good looking. "It's Clay, and it's not about liking you. I don't know who you are, so I can't trust you. Protecting the royal family isn't just a job. I love those little girls, and someone like you hurt them." Katja sighed and began to pack her computer pad away in her bag. "First of all, I'm not the last nanny who breached their privacy. And second of all, you're a police protection officer. Look at my security report." "I have, and there's nothing there. It might as well be blank," Clay said. "That's because there's not much to know." Clay leaned forward on the table. "I read that you were a refugee. How did you end up at your posh boarding school and get that posh accent then?" Now Katja was really starting to get angry. "Who do you think you are? I feel like I'm going through a second interview here. The family hired me. Queen Georgina and Queen Beatrice gave me the job and oversight over the children. You're a police protection officer. It has nothing to do with you. I told you I love those girls. They are my family," Clay insisted. "You may love them, but you're not their family. You are staff, so stick to your job, Sergeant." Clayton had such anger in her eyes at that comment. She was clearly restraining herself, and instead of saying anything, Clay got up and stormed out. Clay lay propped up in her bed, looking at the virtual computer screen in front of her. It displayed Katja's security file. She couldn't stop turning everything over in her mind. There was something wrong, and she couldn't put her finger on it. The little things she had noticed at the cafe, the lack of information in the security file, it just didn't add up. One of the strangest things was that the people who should care, who always cared about who people were, like Quincy and the Queen, weren't worried about the lack of background information. She knew the Queen went through all the background information to do with the personal staff with a fine tooth comb. She was very protective of her family. Why was this appointment different? She didn't know what to ask the computer to search for. There was nothing to go on. Then a thought hit her. Maybe by becoming friendly with Katja and asking questions, she could get the information she needed. Thank you.
I could listen to Jenny all day, you guys. So since Jenny isn't here for me to ask a question, I'm going to ask everyone else. This book is about coworkers. Essentially, one character is obviously the nanny for the royal family, and the other character is a protection officer tasked with protecting them. So they are coworkers. Who has been in your life your most annoying coworker, and why are they annoying? And you guys aren't allowed to say me. You don't have to name names, but who is annoying and why are they annoying? And I'm going to start with Ali because you know she's got an answer. Ali Vali.
I worked at LSU and I ran a clinic for a while, and they had this, we had one of our residents and she was Canadian, which usually Canadians are so nice. This girl was so annoying. Like, you could say you cook something and she was a gourmet chef, and she was a concert, like everything you did, she did it, but on a professional level, and she was just a pain in the ass. So one day, I forgot what she said, and it was like, and I was like, well, I don't know, but I made my shoes. Just shut the
All right, that does sound annoying. Renee, how about you? Your most annoying coworker, why?
I have a few, but the one that is recent is a professor who, for some reason, doesn't really know how to do anything. Like, he's been there for decades and he can't make a PDF. He doesn't know how to use Zoom. He can't get his slides to show. He can't, it's, and I get to help him. And I feel so honored.
Watching right now.
I love
Yeah.
that. And I love the sarcasm. Joy, how about you? Your most annoying coworker?
It was quite a while ago, and he wasn't actually a coworker. He was a boss. He was the district manager. I worked at a pet store, and the manager that he hired this really young guy because he had a crush on him. And the guy he hired was afraid of bunnies. I mean, he was not cut out for the job, but he treated this manager like he was a prince, and it was just really annoying.
Oh, I love that. Afraid of bunnies.
He was afraid of bunnies, and he sucked up a hamster with a vacuum one time accidentally. Cleaning the cages, yeah. Yeah, the guy was not cut out for the job, but he was cute, so let's hire him.
Oh dear. All right, Dave, how about you? Your most annoying coworker?
Oh, I feel so bad for that hamster.
Yes.
I'm really fortunate that I've had some really good coworkers. There was one though. I worked at a furniture gallery, and she was a know-it-all, and she would make stuff up to impress the customers and the clients, and just tell people, oh yes, that fabric is completely stain resistant and pet resistant, and we're like, no, it's not. But she would do whatever it took just to make the sale and say whatever it took, and it drove me insane. But I kept my mouth shut.
I get that. Well, I cannot answer this question because I only have one coworker, and we all know she has no faults. All right, next up for reading is Joy Argento, who is reading from her release, Carrie and Hope. If everyone else could please mute themselves and turn off their videos. Joy, please introduce yourself, your book, and start reading whenever you're ready.
Okay. I live in Western New York. I am an artist, as is Carrie in Carrie and Hope. What I'm going to be reading, Carrie and Hope meet at a grief support group. Neither one feels like they should be there, and they end up leaving together. This takes place a while after that. They've gotten to know each other a little bit, and Carrie has asked Hope to model for her for a painting or a series of paintings. And they've just had dinner, so this is where we pick up. They're still kind of getting to know each other. Would you like more? Carrie asked. No, thank you. I'm stuffed. That was delicious. You'll have to give me your secret online recipe. Carrie laughed. I'll give you the copy I printed, but I have to warn you, I got some sauce on it. That works. Hope enjoyed their casual conversation while they cleared the table and loaded the dirty dishes into the dishwasher. Carrie filled a couple of containers with leftovers for Hope to take home with her. I'm trusting you with my good Tupperware. That means I get to see you again when you return it. Or it means you'll lose some good containers. Hope was sure she would see Carrie again. In fact, she was looking forward to it. She smiled at the thought. What are you smiling at? Carrie asked. At the thought of adding to my stolen Tupperware collection. Carrie playfully swatted at her with a dish towel. Hey, you could hurt me. I'm delicate. Delicate like a flower? Carrie smiled, matched her own. Nope, delicate like a bomb. Noted. I would hate to see you explode, especially from getting hit with a dish towel. Oh, I think it would take more than a dish towel. Like a 2x4? Let's not find out. Want to show me those drawings you were telling me about? Absolutely. Great, lead the way. Hope followed Carrie down a small hallway to the room at the end. A slight smell of oil paints and turpentine greeted them as Carrie opened the door. Here they are, Carrie said as she led Hope over to the pile of drawings. She spread them out on the table so Hope could get a better look. These are great. May I? She asked before picking one up. Sure, go ahead. Carrie, I'm really impressed. Did you use a model for these, or are they out of your head? These are rough sketches out of my head, just to get an idea of how I want the poses to be. If you do decide to pose for me, this is basically what I would want you to do. See how I drew the material here? She pointed to the drawing on the table. The material covers up the breasts. There isn't any actual nudity. Not that I'm against nudity, Carrie said. I just want these to be really sensual without being sexual. Does that make sense? Yes. She could put her modesty aside for the sake of art and spending more time with this new friend. Posing wouldn't be too bad. I'm seriously considering modeling for you. Carrie smiled. Really? That would be so great. I'm so excited about this. You haven't seen me with my clothes off yet. You might change your mind when you do, Hope teased her. Stop it. You're going to be perfect for this. It'll be great. Carrie's enthusiasm bubbled to the surface and spread across her face in a big grin. Hope set the drawing down and glanced around the room. Can I look at what you're working on? She pointed at the painting on the easel. Feel free to look at whatever you want. Carrie stepped out of the way to give Hope more room to move around. Hope spent a long moment looking at Carrie before walking over to the easel. Carrie found herself getting lost in those brown eyes and was grateful when Hope looked away and went over to the painting she was working on. Without her consent, she found herself looking directly at Hope's butt. She forced her eyes away and shook her head. But before she realized it, she found herself once again taking in the sight before her. I'm just checking out the model from an artistic angle, she reasoned. Stop it. What would you think if she saw you ogling her? And why are you ogling her anyways? You don't ogle straight women. You're an amazing artist, Hope said, turning towards her. Carrie brought her eyes up quickly. Thanks. How come you don't do this full time? Because I like to do things like pay my bills and buy groceries. It's really hard to make a living with just art. I have a day job, but my art is how I keep my sanity. Sanity is highly overrated, Hope grinned. I gave up on it years ago. You're funny, Carrie said, once more looking into the depths of Hope's eyes. What do you think of this one? Carrie found the need to break the eye contact. She led Hope over to another painting, a landscape, not Carrie's favorite thing to paint, but this one was inspired by the way the late afternoon sun bounced off the trees. Oh, I like it. She took several long moments to examine it closely before turning back to Carrie. Carrie felt her face grow warm when she realized she had been studying Hope the whole time Hope had been studying her painting. Should we have dessert? I made red velvet cake. We can have it in the living room. Carrie busied herself stacking the drawings on the table into a pile, trying to get her thoughts in order. I love red velvet cake. Keep feeding me like this and you'll have one chubby model. I doubt that. And does that mean you've decided? Carrie worked to keep the excitement out of her voice. Hope smiled. I'm leaning towards saying yes. I can accept leaning for now. I really hope you will. Why don't you make yourself comfortable in the living room and I'll go get dessert. Coffee? I have decaf or tea. Carrie shut the lights off and closed the door as I left the room. Decaf would be good. Carrie got everything together and piled it on the serving tray. Hope was examining another painting that adorned the living room walls when Carrie entered the room. Here we go. She set the tray on the coffee table and handed Hope her piece of cake. They sat across from each other, enjoying their dessert in each other's company. The conversation ran the gamut from Carrie's art to Hope's son to Carrie's favorite hand cream. I'm going to try that one, Hope said. My hands get so dry. I'm constantly washing them, especially seeing I have my fingers in people's mouths all day. Does that have something to do with what you do for a living, or is putting fingers in people's mouths just a hobby? Carrie asked with a straight face. Yeah, I do it just for fun, Hope grinned. I'm a dental hygienist, so it kind of comes with the territory. I went back to school when my son started kindergarten. I wanted to do something that wouldn't take forever to get my degree and would bring money into the house. It definitely isn't my passion. What is your passion? I guess that would be writing. Carrie leaned forward. Then why don't you write? I went to college with the intention of majoring in journalism. I really wanted to be a writer. I dropped out after my first semester because I was pregnant with Derek. I got married 5 months before he was born. I put my career goals on the back burner so I could take care of him and my husband. My ambitions took a backseat to their needs. I figured being a dental hygienist would be a good choice because I knew the hours would allow me to be home with them at night. Hope took a bite of her cake and nodded her approval. And what about now? Now? Hope repeated. Now I guess I just am where I am. I haven't really thought about it much. Do you still write? Poems and an occasional short story, but not in a while. I haven't written in a year or more. I just haven't had anything inspire me lately. Maybe I could inspire you. Carrie reprimanded herself for her thoughts. What the hell? She chalked it up to her recent feelings of loneliness. Of course, that might have just been an excuse to let herself off the hook for finding herself so attracted to a straight woman, and possibly her model. Any kind of feelings for her would just be wrong. That's it.
Thanks, Joy. That was awesome.
Thanks.
So Carrie is an artist, and we were just saying in the green room, I guess I can call it the green room, be all fancy, before we came onto this Zoom, that you are also an artist too.
Correct.
My question for you is, do you draw your characters before you write the book, while you're writing the book? Do you have that visual representation of them?
They totally live in my head. The first book I wrote, I tried to use actresses in my head as an example as I wrote it, and even that didn't work. So to answer your question, no, they live in my head and on the pages and nowhere else.
All right, that's cool. I love that. I was interested as you were reading. You have a writer and an artist, which is similar to you too. So that's very cool. All righty, up next, find my list. We have Renee Roman, who is reading from her release, Body Language. Renee, go ahead, introduce yourself, your book, and start reading whenever you like.
Sure. I'm Renee Roman. I'll be reading from my 5th book with Bold Strokes Books. It's called Body Language, an Erotic Romance. And this is a scene from about the 3rd chapter. And it features 2 main characters, Micah James and Jennifer Long. Micah is a college student and a waiter at a fine dining restaurant where she meets wealthy women and puts her sexual skills on a private menu. Jennifer is a college professor of English literature and tutors one-on-one when she's not in the lecture hall. In this scene, Jen has introduced herself and is about to explain why she's there. Jen pulled out a folder with Micah's name on it. "May I join you?" Micah nodded. It had been a while since she'd been this close to an attractive woman who wasn't there because of her talents in bed. "It appears you're finding it difficult to put what you know on paper, and since English is my area of expertise, I believe I can help." Micah studied Jen's face for a long beat. She wanted to hear the professor out before making a rash decision to decline whatever she was offering. She'd made enough decisions that way. It was time for a different approach. Jen's pulse quickened. Micah was more handsome than she thought the first time she saw her, and the heat of Micah's scrutiny made her belly tighten. "Please, go on," Micah gestured with her hand. "Thank you." She'd prepared a statement, one she'd used in the past with reluctant students, but the words were jumbled in her head. She cleared her throat, glanced down at the folder in front of her, and met Micah's probing gaze. "As I was saying, Micah, excuse me, before we get into specifics, I could use a decent cup of coffee. Can we go somewhere off campus?" Jen let out a breath. She assumed the request was a stalling tactic. "If you'd be more comfortable somewhere else, that's fine." Comfort is something I am used to. The intensity of Micah's gaze burned her skin. "I know a small cafe a few blocks away." She needed to take control of the situation, though it was silly, really. She and Micah had only just met, but her heart raced and her body seemed to have a mind of its own. Micah slid into a leather jacket and slung her messenger bag over her shoulder. "Shall we?" She motioned for Jen to go first. "What's your goal, Micah?" she asked as they headed into the cold afternoon sunshine. "At the moment, there's only one." Micah kicked a pebble before meeting her gaze. "Get through this semester." "And after that?" "I'll have to wait and see." Micah's resistance to tell her more wasn't her concern. She was there to get her through the immediate, and that's what she'd do. "Here we are." Micah reached around her to open the door, and her hand brushed Jen's outstretched one, sending a wave of warmth through her. "What would you like?" Micah's hazel eyes drew her in, their color deepening with a hint of green. "I'm fine." Her stomach was already churning. "I wouldn't have dragged you out if I thought you wouldn't join me." Micah's confident gaze and seductive smile would be dangerous in any other situation, but Jen was the one in control here. "A coffee with cream would be great." She reached for her wallet. "This one's on me." With Micah's back to her, she had an opportunity to study her figure and liked what she saw. She wondered if she was a lesbian and chided herself. Micah's sexual preferences were of no concern to her. Here you go. Micah placed the paper cup in front of her and smiled as she sat. She formed a small O with her lips and blew across the surface before taking a tentative sip. Much better than the cafeteria swill. Micah looked at her across the top of the cup, and the steam gave the impression of an ethereal entity hidden in the mist. Micah's lips were full and pouty and kissable, though she hadn't kissed a woman in so long she had no memory of the last time. She reached for her drink and nearly knocked it over. Micah's hand lightly touched hers, and she jerked it back so quick she almost hit the cup a second time. Are you all right? Genuine concern laced Micah's voice. Nerves made her laugh. I'm not usually so clumsy. Being this close to someone she found insanely attractive wasn't an everyday occurrence, and being alone with a woman even less so. Glancing around, Jen realized that was hardly the case. They weren't alone. So why did it feel so intimate? You're not clumsy at all, Micah said, though you do seem a bit nervous. I'm the one who should be on edge. There's still time to avoid failing. You're not even halfway through the semester. I appreciate you meeting with me, but I don't think I can accept. She sat back. It wasn't often a student wasn't willing to take her help. And why is that? The reason I came back to college was to break an annoying habit I had of accepting handouts from others. She looked into her coffee and shook her head. I knew it was a mistake to think I'd do better this time around. Micah shared a wry smile. Guess I'll never know. Micah, it's not too late. I appreciate your enthusiasm, Professor, but I can't accept any more handouts. She reached for her bag. It's Jen. She grabbed Micah's hand to stop her from making a decision she'd regret. The touch felt too familiar and she withdrew. Don't you want to succeed? When her gaze was met with doubt, she went on. What would it take for you to agree to let me help you? Micah seemed to consider her words. You mean you'd be willing to strike a mutually beneficial bargain? If it will keep you from giving up, then yes, within reason. She bit her lip and wondered what she could say to buy some time while she came up with a game plan. Micah felt the old insecurities wash over her, though the low ache had nothing to do with nerves and everything to do with desire. The kind of desire hadn't felt in a long time. Still, if she were to accept the professor's help, it had to be on her terms. I'll agree on one condition. With a nod of enthusiasm, Jen sat forward, her cup seemingly forgotten. Okay, anything. Help with other courses, or extra credit, a weekend cram session, you name it. You can help me get a passing grade and keep my GPA where it needs to be if I can give you all the sex you can handle. Jen backed away, her eyes wide. Sex, she said in a low, hissing tone as she looked around nervously. What makes you think I need that? Micah shrugged. I didn't say you needed it, but that's my forte, like teaching's yours. You do what you're good at, and I'll do what I'm good at. We both get something out of the arrangement. In the back of her mind, she questioned why she was excited about the prospect of once again exchanging sex for favors. It's the only way I won't feel like you're giving me a handout. I can't pay for tutoring, but I'm adept with my hands. Unless you don't think I can hold up my end of the bargain and you're not interested in women. It's not that. Jen's eyes darted around, looking everywhere but at Micah. I don't date students. It's unethical. Well, that's good because I hate competition. She laughed and Jen finally shared a tight smile. Besides, we're not going to be dating. Micah leaned forward and kept her voice to a whisper. We're going to be fucking.
My, oh my, Professor. Goodness me, I think we should have had Renee Roman go last because we're obviously super uncomfortable sitting here for the next half hour.
Well, then good. My work here is done for the night.
Renee, you've written in lots of different genres. So what is it about erotic romance that's special for you?
I think that the people who read erotica, who enjoy reading erotica, it's intimate. It's an intimate type of story. And it should be. That's why I read erotica, and that's why I write it, is because I want the person immersed in what is happening on the page. And hopefully that's what I'm doing. And I don't think you can do that in other genres as well. I think you can get there to a certain point with a contemporary romance, but I think that the level of intimacy and trust and being upfront with sexual desires can't be found in other genres.
I like that. Cool.
Thank
All
you.
right. Up next, we have David S. Pederson reading from the latest in his mystery series. David, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself, your book, and start reading whenever you're ready.
Sure, thank you, Sandy. So my name is David. I am the author of the Heath Barrington murder mystery series. Death's Prelude is actually a prequel to the other 5 books. It is set in 1937. Verbena Partridge is taking her young nephew, Heath, on a transatlantic crossing to England. And the first half of the book takes place on the Queen Mary, and the second half of the book takes place at Heatherwick, which is the fictitious estate of Lord Quimby, as shown here in my architectural rendering. But the scene I'll be reading from takes place on the Queen Mary, where Verbena, Heath, and Verbena's friend, Myrtle Obermeyer, have gathered in Verbena's stateroom shortly after departure. Verbena is perusing the passenger list, looking for anyone of interest who may be aboard. So let's go to her stateroom now and listen in, shall we? Oh, how interesting. Lord Simon Quimby is on board, Verbena said. It's been quite some time. My first husband, Michael, and Simon's father, Sir Lionel, had business together once or twice, and we all met in London a few years ago. And I was there with Maxwell, don't forget, Mrs. Obermeyer said. That was the last trip he took. Letitia Birdwell was there too, I remember. Auntie nodded. That's right. Her and Lionel Quimby were courting at the time. I wonder whatever happened between them. Yes, dear Letitia. I see her regularly these days. You must be careful what you say around her, though. She's such a gossip. So you make sure you sit right next to her, of course, Verbena said. Mrs. Obermeyer pouted. Be nice, or I won't tell you what happened between her and Lionel Quimby. Oh, all right, Myrtle, I'm sorry, do tell. Well, Sir Henry Longfellow had in effect set up Letitia with Lionel Quimby, as Lionel's wife had died many years prior, of course. Apparently, Lionel and Letitia hit it off with some success, but nothing of note ever happened. It ended rather abruptly. You mean they never married? I said. Correct. The official reason given was that Letitia was homesick for America, but personally, I think she was afraid of the Quimby curse. I ran into Simon, Lord Quimby, I guess I should call him now, on the Aquitania last spring. It was all rather peculiar, Mrs. Obermeyer said. She finished her glass and held it up for a refill. I obliged and helped myself to a banana from the fruit basket while I was at it. Thank you, dear. Now, where was I? You were saying you ran into Lord Quimby on the Aquitania. Oh, yes, yes. Most peculiar. He had made fast friends with a young man from Philadelphia. I forget his name, Sturgis or something. Anyway, just before we docked in New York, this young man was found dead in his cabin. Dead? From what? Verbena said. Well, the final verdict was natural causes, a heart condition or something, but most peculiar if you ask me. There was a rumor that he'd been poisoned. He was only in his 20s. So what does this have to do with this Lord Quimby fellow? They had just met on board and become friends. Don't you find that odd? So many peculiar deaths around him in such a short span of time. Simon's mother died shortly after his sister was born, and Simon was only 6. Then 2 years ago, their father was killed during a burglary at the estate. My goodness, that's awful. Yes, but the burglar was never caught. And I hate to say it, mind you, but there were some who suspected Simon, including Letitia. As she won't hesitate to tell you, I'm sure, Rubina said. Well, she does know the family. She even attended Sir Lionel's funeral, and she told me the circumstances surrounding his death were, shall we say, unusual. How so? He was murdered in his bedroom on the 2nd floor with a house full of people. It happened near bedtime, but not in the dead of night, if you'll excuse the expression. Why would a burglar climb up to a 2nd-story window, crawl in, stab him in his bed, and then flee? Well, of course he'd flee, Verbena said. He wouldn't exactly stay for tea. Well, no, but why choose a 2nd-story window? Why not break into a 1st floor? And why not wait until everyone had gone to bed? What burglar in their right mind would climb up to an open window where there was a light on and someone was inside? It does seem unusual, I do admit. Well, it most certainly does. That's why some people think it was an inside job made to look like a burglary. And then, just 1 year ago, Simon's sister, Lady Charlotte, died. Such a tragedy. I remember hearing about that, Rubina said. She was only 23, I believe. Accidental poisoning is what the New York Times reported. Well, yes, but honestly, how does one accidentally drink poison? Simon was 29 at the time, so he's 30 now. He's never married either. I believe Letitia said he was engaged, but it ended abruptly. Probably because of the curse. It's all been because of the curse. What is this curse you keep talking about? Utter nonsense is what it is, Rubina said. Lionel Quimby himself told me about it. Pure rubbish, voodoo, witchcraft. Oh, I wouldn't be so sure. You see, Simon's father did something to upset an old woman when Simon was just a boy. She put a curse on the whole family. Honestly, Myrtle, how can you believe in such things? Verbena said, finishing her champagne as I poured her another. Because it's true. So Lionel's wife died, Lionel was murdered, Charlotte was poisoned, either by accident or... And what of Simon? Nothing bad has befallen him, Verbena said. No, not that we know of. But what if he did kill his father? I would certainly say that was bad. And then the mysterious death of his sister and that fellow on the Aquitania last year. Why would some people think he killed his own father or have anything to do with his sister's death? Oh, jealousy plain and simple. Charlotte adored her father and likewise. Simon felt left out. You don't know that to be a fact, Myrtle, Verbena said. But it makes sense, certainly. Oh, I don't think he did it, of course. But people do like to talk. So,
Awesome. I love that. And I would like Rubina to be in all your books just so we can hear that voice every time you read. Love it. So this book, Death's Prelude, is a prequel. Is that right?
Yes.
So what prompted you to write a prequel for your series?
I had been getting a lot of questions from readers as to how things came to be in the series. How did he start drinking the martini with the pickle? How, who was his first romance? What was he like before he met Helen Keyes, who he's involved with in the later books? So I decided to write a prequel and kind of give the backstory to a lot of those things and hopefully answer a lot of questions from people.
Cool. I love it when stories come out of reader demand. That's always fun. All right. Last but certainly not least, we have the lovely Ali Vali rocking her lime green tonight. Ali, please, I don't think you need an introduction, but go ahead, introduce yourself. your book and start reading. You're also on mute, just so you know.
That would make it difficult. All right, I'm Ali Vali. I have written quite a few books in different genres and stuff, but the one that started it all, and this will be the 7th book in a series. I just got a box of these today, so if y'all want one, make sure y'all PM me. But it's The Devil Incarnate. It continues the story of the Casey family. Crime family, I should say, in New Orleans. This one will introduce the Russian mob into there. And there's still quite a few old enemies like Anthony Curtis from the rogue FBI agent. So the action kind of begins a little bit after chapter 1, but if you listen to our event we had last week, well, actually at the end of January, I read a little bit from the first chapter. So this will be a continuation of that particular scene. So this is Kane being kind of a mom, being at home, enjoying her family. And once that, like I said, it'll continue from there, and then we'll start killing people left and right. So this is early morning in the Casey household. Hannah Marie Casey, if you don't stop running, I swear, Emma said as Kane reached the bottom of the stairs in time to catch Hannah when she jumped from the 7th step up. Why must you encourage her? Emma asked as she gripped the railing and seemed to start breathing again. Because fearless people come to rule the world, Kane said, kissing Hannah's cheek. Isn't that right, Hannah girl? What do you say? Sorry, Mama, Hannah said, appearing anything but, as she gazed up at her mother with a smile. She put Hannah down when Emma handed her the baby. You're as incorrigible as she is, and Emma's hand stayed on Kane's arm as Emma stuck her tongue out at her. Lassie, you say that like it's a bad thing, she said as she put her free hand around Emma's waist. I should spank you for teaching your daughter bad things, but you're not lying. You always follow through. Emma shook her head as they headed for the kitchen. The baby jumped in her arms when she saw their longtime housekeeper, Carmen, and lunged at her when they were close enough. There'd be plenty of changes around the house with the addition of family, but none more surprising than Ross, Emma's father, and Carmen, their housekeeper, their budding romance. She had a feeling Dallas and Remy weren't going to be the only ones planning a ceremony in the future now that Ross was almost free of Carol. Mom, don't forget I'm going to the movies with my friends after school, Hayden said when she sat down. I haven't forgotten, and here. She handed over 3 20s. This was the 4th time he'd mentioned it, so she was starting to suspect the friends weren't his buddies from the all-boys school he attended. Remember that Mook stays with you, she said of Hayden's longtime guard. You know it, and I'll be home by 7 or so. Make it 7 on the dot, Emma said, and her tone meant it would be unwise to argue. It's a school night, so lose the pout, son. Besides, I'm sure the girls' parents will agree with me. Yes, ma'am, Hayden said, and Kane had to laugh. Now you see why I never step out of line, she said to him and winked at Emma. Finish eating, and Mama will give you a ride. Mama and I will give you a ride to school. She smiled as the kids talked nonstop about their friends and school. The only surprising thing was that Hannah had stopped talking about Lucy as much. That she hadn't mentioned her once today meant there was something wrong. But Hannah had a way of clamming up whenever she asked too many questions about her best friend. Do you feel okay, Hannah? Emma asked, seeming to have figured out the same thing. Hannah nodded but stayed quiet as she shoved eggs in her mouth. Are Liam and Tori coming with us to Grandpa's? Hannah said after a long pause, clearly changing the subject. Abigail's youngest 2 were a common sight around their house after they'd fallen in love with Hannah. Sadie, the oldest, liked to read and help her mom with her siblings, and Hannah loved her as well. Kane was hoping Finn would move the relationship along, which meant taking legal responsibility for Abigail's children. It was the honorable thing to do, and it would also drive Nicola out of whatever hole she was hiding in. Not that she wanted to use the family as bait, but that was one of the only ways to find someone who had died as effectively as Nicola. Everyone's coming, so you'll have plenty of people to play with. Are you finished? She asked, pointing at Hannah's plate. All ready, Mom. Hannah picked up her dirty dishes and handed them to Carmen. They left with an entourage of guards, and Kane stared at the van a house down from them. This time it was a plain panel van, and she got a kick out of the neighbors that took turns calling the police about it. It had been months since she'd seen any of the people inside, but they were always there. She couldn't imagine such a boring existence. All they did was watch her bring her kids to school, take her wife out on dates, and go to the office. The slip up they were waiting on was never going to happen unless she lost her senses. Wishful thinking on their part if they thought that was in their future. Hayden was dropped off first, and they headed back down uptown for Hannah's school. She walked Hannah to the front door and shook hands with the young woman who was now Hannah's teacher. The old bitch who'd given their daughter such a hard time was history, and the young woman who'd taken her place was someone Hannah adored. "Are you going to be good?" she asked Hannah as she crouched to Hannah's level. "I'll give it my best shot," Hannah said, smiling because her answer made Kane laugh. "That's the best we could ask for, kid." All right. That's it.
Awesome. Thanks, Allie. Always love a taste of Casey's domestic life. So what book is this for Kane Casey now? Number 10?
No, not that I'm not that easy yet. No, there's 8 in the series because we have a prequel who still needs a sequel. You got to for that. But this one is, if you follow the continuous timeline, this is the 7th book in the series.
Okay.
Which actually, when I started writing the series, I said this would be the last one. But
Oh no.
it's-
No. Everyone can post in the chat room whether they would like this book to be the last one in the Kane Casey series. I can guarantee you what's going to happen. Okay, so you've been writing Kane for a long time now. I won't guess how many years, but what do you think has been the biggest change for Kane over these 7 books? In what way has she changed the most across the series?
I think it's going to be that, when Emma left her and she was very bitter about it. I mean, she still had their son, but she was very bitter about it. She was a lot harder, I think, in the first book, not as, quite as warm and fuzzy. Well, as warm as fuzzy as Kane gets, but I think that the family and, expanding their family like they did in the last book has really kind of softened her up. And then it was interesting now with Vic as my my editor. Vic is a big proponent of emotion. So Kane will still kill people in very interesting ways, but she does a lot more emotion this time. So I think that but I think in the end it does make for a better book, and you'll see that. She's. It's one of those things when you almost have everything you want, but there's like a million people that want to take it away from you. It makes you a little nervous. So not that she'll ever be gun shy per se, but it's got to be, if you've seen the Queen's Gambit, that's kind of Kane's life all in she's constantly shuffling pieces to make sure that nothing happens that's too bad.
All right. Well, I don't think the story's over for Kane Casey. So other attendees can cast their votes if they like. All right. We do have a couple of minutes left. So I do have one other question for everyone. And that is, did your book, or how did your book change throughout the writing process? So even if you're a pantster, you have some idea of what your book is going to be. How did that change or develop, or however you want to interpret that, from when you started writing to when you finished writing the book? Dave, why don't you go first?
Oh, constant changing, always. From characters' names to who did it to how they did it. With a murder mystery, I always start at the end when I write a murder mystery because I kind of have to know who's going to get killed and how they get killed and why they get killed. But that even when I start that way, it sometimes changes and evolves over and over. And I don't want to give away the ending of the book, but the ending of the book is definitely different than the way it started out.
That's so interesting that you decide on one ending, but when you start writing, the whole ending changes. So you surprise yourself too.
Sometimes, yeah, absolutely.
You have to write the book so you can find out who done it, right?
Right.
Renee, how about you? What changes throughout the process of writing?
Definitely the depth of emotion. I also have Vic as an editor, and she's constantly slow down, dig deeper, and it makes for a much more emotional book, and I think that definitely resonates with readers, so what might have started out with Micah as kind of a shallow character, because I personally identified with Jen quite a bit. They both grew immensely to the end. And there were some surprises, even for me as I wrote, because I don't have an outline at all when I write. But I really enjoyed writing the end.
That's
It was a
cool.
shocker even to me.
I love that. Joy, how about you? The question is, what changed throughout your writing process from what you thought the book was going to be in the beginning?
I think the biggest change was Hope's backstory. I didn't necessarily have it all worked out when I started, but she's got some secrets that come out during the course of the book that I didn't necessarily plan on. So it would be who Hope used to be and who she becomes.
All right, well, that's intriguing. Ali, how about you? What changed?
I think it's kind of like what Renee said. I think it was the end. I was going to end it a certain way, and then my writing hand. Actually, today is handwriting National Handwriting Day, so had a mind of its own. So the end kind of changed a little bit. So, which I think will make it more interesting for the next book. So.
All right, I love that. I love that. For most of you, it's the ending that turns out to be the thing that develops as you write. That's very cool. All right, we are out of time, unfortunately, sadly. But we'll be back next month to preview our March releases with all those lovely authors then. But this has been BSB Preview for our February releases. Enjoy, and thank you all for joining us. Have a great night.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you. Thanks, Sandy.